Members and Mayor of the City of Lowell, the best job. City. I actually had the best job. Headmaster of Lowell High School, but being mayor's second best job. I think you're going to find this to be an interesting night. First of all, I really want to thank the city manager and her staff, and Christine and the city solicitor's office for doing a good job of putting together this program. I think there's been a lot of discussion as to this voting rights issue. But the thing is, it's important. I think the information you get tonight, you'll realize how important it is, and you realize the work that was put in by the Lowell City Council, and the managers and the solicitor's office. First of all, I'd like to introduce Councilor Jim Milanazzo is here. Councilor Rita Mercer, and Vice Mayor Vesta Miller. Oh, there he is. He hides him. Okay. And Councilor Rodney Alley just came in. But this the suit that we had was something you look at and say, okay, something has to be done. But I really do want to commend the City Council because they worked hard. There was a lot of discussion that went on about this, and it was a long road to get to where we are. But I think tonight you'll find that it was well worth it. So I'd now like to turn it over to City Solicitor Christine O'Connor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. With us this evening is Theodore Arrington, and he is a retired professor from the Political Science Department at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. He served as an expert in more than 40 voting cases, including the seminal case of Jingles. His area of expertise include electoral behavior, the design and administration of electoral systems, redistricting, and compliance with the Voting Rights Act. He's been involved in redistricting cases in over a dozen states and has been retained by various governmental organizations and nonprofits such as Common Cause, NAACP, the ACLU, as well as the federal courts and the U.S. Department of Justice. After his presentation, which will be under an hour, we'll have a Q&A period, and we also have translation services. If they could raise their hands in the back and maybe stand up. We have from the CBA, Niall Espinola, and from the CMAA, Wee Sol Chin. And with that, Ted?
Chris, can you just ask if anybody needs translation services?
Thank you, Christine.
If they can identify.
Sure, if anyone needs translation services, you can identify and they will assist you at one of the tables. Spanish and Khmer.
The translation services for my southern drawl are not available. I've seen a lot of Lowell the last couple of days. You are really fortunate to be. It's a lovely city. And I can tell you that I have been to meetings like this before in much bigger cities and we didn't get half this turnout. So you're very civic-minded. Let me start by clarifying my role because I don't want any misunderstanding. It is not my job to tell you what kind of election system we should have. It's not. And I've never tried to do that. I'm a statistical expert in voting rights cases. And my job has been simply to tell the City Council, and now you, some of the facts. What you do with those facts, what you advise the City Council to do, and what they decide to do, that's up to you. This is your city. And I'm sure you will make a good decision. But I believe that we have a number of different options on the table, which could actually improve your election system. So it's not just complying with the Voting Rights Act, it's making things better. Yeah, come on.
Can everyone hear?
Are you sure? Is that better? This microphone is very sensitive. You've got to be right up here. And then if I say Peter Piper, pick, pet. See what that is? Okay. Next slide. Okay, now we're aware that many of you are up to date on what's happening. And you're just here to hear about the options. I understand that. But there may also be some people here who really haven't kept up. In my college, you haven't done your homework. So we're kind of go over what's happened so far, and that's number 1 through number 6. Relatively rapidly. I won't talk too fast, but relatively rapidly, because I know that's repetitive for some of you. And then we'll spend more time on 7 and 8. So as you see, we're going to look at what was the lawsuit, what was it all about, what is the Voting Rights Act, what constitutes a violation of the Voting Rights Act, or I would really, it's better said, what are the circumstances in which your election system happens to not be in accord with it. That's a better way to say it. It's said as a violation, but that gives the wrong impression. Why change? What is the settlement? The timeline on the settlement, and then we're going to look at the options and potential advantages and disadvantages to the different systems. Okay, now as most of you know, the lawsuit was filed in May of 2017 by Asian American and Hispanic Latino citizens in Lowell under the Voting Rights Act. So that really starts the process. And they're saying they believe that the system is not in accord with the Voting Rights Act. And they filed that with the courts. They were challenging Lowell's at-large plurality municipal system under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Okay? There are many different sections of the Voting Rights Act, but this kind of action is done under Section 2. They allege that that the current system impermissibly dilutes minority voting strength. Now, I know you all know what dilute is. You put a little bit of something in a glass, you put a lot of water in it, you've diluted it. It's the same idea. There are minority citizens, and they feel that this system, because most of the voters are white, dilutes their vote, and they end up not having an equal opportunity to participate in the political process. And that's language from the Voting Rights Act. Its intent is that everybody should have an equal opportunity to participate and an equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. President Johnson signed it. It's really the first important piece of voting rights or civil rights legislation in decades. And many people consider it to be the most important act. The year before, they had passed the Civil Rights Act, which had many provisions and was very important. But a lot of people in politics think that assuring the vote for everybody is really more important than trying to pass laws to govern how people behave with each other. That may or may not be true. But in any case, the Voting Rights Act prohibits voting systems that result in dilution of minority voting strength. In order to implement that, somebody has to bring a suit. In many days, it used to be the Justice Department in Washington. These days, they don't do much of that, so it's really up to individual civil rights groups and individuals in the community to bring it up. In other words, a system may not be in compliance with the Voting Rights Act, but it would just go along until somebody challenges it. And so it becomes a court action. Minority groups must have reasonable opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. And as a political scientist, let me remind you that what we're talking about is opportunity. We're not talking about seats that are automatically allocated to people. We don't in this country automatically allocate seats to anybody. If you want to be elected, you got to run. But you need an opportunity. It has to be possible for you to win. Okay, now what constitutes a violation? To determine whether the electoral system violates Section 2, you look only at statistical analysis, which is what guys like me do. I'm not a lawyer. I sometimes pretend to be, but I'm not, okay? But my job is to do statistical analysis. I give the courts statistical information, and the statistical information that's required for this kind of case is well established now with hundreds of cases, many of which have been affirmed by the Supreme Court. All of the data we look at is public data. It's of two kinds. Census data from, in this case, the 2010 census, and your election data. That is the data that's collected every time you vote by your election commission. Remind me what it's called? Election board? Election commission, okay. They keep the historical records. How many people voted, in which precincts did they vote, how many votes did they give for each candidate. So those are the two kinds of data that are basically used for this kind of analysis. The original case, which established what you have to do when you're challenging an at-large election system, and that's what you have. All of the candidates are elected at large. Simple voting, the ones who get the most votes, the 9 who get the most votes. That case was the Jingles case. I was an expert witness in the Jingles case. I'm going to be modest here. I was not the expert witness. That was somebody else. But I was there. And that counts for something. In the Jingles case, they set forth a three-pronged test, which we call the Jingles preconditions. And geographically compact to constitute a majority in a single-member district. Now, the reason for that is that if the judge were to find that the at-large system is not in compliance, then there would have to be a remedy. There would have to be some way to fix it. Well, if the minority group is not sufficiently large to form a compact district, then there may not be any way to fix it. So that right away the court would say, it may be in violation, but what am I going to do? Because you see, the only thing the judge can impose without an agreement from plaintiffs and defendants is a single-member district system. And if that wouldn't fix the problem, then there isn't a resolution, no reason to go forward. Secondly, the minority group has to be politically cohesive. In other words, the court is saying, look, there has to be something that the minority voters want to see represented. And if they're not voting for the same candidates, then they don't share the same values. There's nothing there to represent. But if they're cohesively voting for the same set of candidates, then they are trying to say something, and that something needs to be represented. And then third, the majority votes sufficiently as a block, the white majority is what it means, sufficiently as a block to enable it to usually defeat the minority's preferred candidates. So that even though there are a fairly large number of minority voters, large enough to form a majority in a single-member district, and even though they're voting cohesively for the same candidates, those candidates usually are defeated. And if those three things are present, those called the Jingles preconditions, if those three things are present, the plaintiffs always win. Now, political science, social science, you never say always, do you? Usually, more time than not, all of those squeegee words. There may be an exception, but I've been in this business for 35 years. I have never seen a case or heard of a case. There may be one, but I've never heard of a case in which the three preconditions were established and the plaintiffs failed to win. There's more to it than that. There's more for experts like me to be employed doing. But if you've got those three, it's a lock. That's just the way it is. And when you look at the logic of those three, you can see why that's true. Okay, so with that as a background, then the next thing is why make change? Well, the plaintiffs presented their case. It took a lot of discussion for the city council to convince them to go ahead and present their case, because they could have waited till trial. But the city council convinced them to do it. They had me double check it to find out they'd used the right data, they'd used the right techniques. I replicated some of the things that they had done to say, yep, the plaintiffs have done it correctly. And I give an opinion. I'm not going to tell you how to change your system, but on the statistical analysis, I can give you an opinion. That's what I do in court. And my opinion was that the court would say that they have established the 3 preconditions, and you can't win. You can go to court if you want to. You can spend millions of dollars, but you won't win. And I know in places where they did fight it out, it divided the community. Okay? So you have to consider not only are you very, very likely to lose, but you'll divide this community. Moreover, as we discussed it, I think some members of the city council, maybe all of them, began to see that there are some advantages from some of the alternative systems which plaintiffs would accept, which also might make the system overall better. So, your city council and the legal department went to great efforts to work with the plaintiffs to come up with a settlement. That is, they mediated before the judge, and they came to an agreement, something that plaintiffs agreed to and city council agrees to. The consent decree says the procedure for city council to select a new electoral system to be implemented for the November 21 municipal elections, not this fall. Nothing's changed for November. That's going to be the same. What we're talking about is establishing a system which would be put into effect 2 years from now. That consent decree provided for 4 electoral systems, one of which will be selected for implementation following a period of public debate. That's where you come in. Now, these 4 have been accepted by the plaintiffs as a proper remedy. They have said that any of these are okay with them, right? Any of those will do because they all believe they will remedy the problem. The city then needs to determine which of those is best for the city. Now here I want to note, just looking at that last phrase of that one, I don't know every case that has ever come to resolution, because ones that are resolved in this way are not famous. But I don't believe that there's ever been a remedy derived like this one with input from the citizens. Usually what happens is plaintiffs' attorneys and defendants' attorneys get together after the trial or before, and they hash out differences and they come to a decision without consulting the public. Now, there may be another case where the public was consulted in the process, but I've never heard of it. This is certainly rare and maybe unique, that your city council has decided that they can't determine this without public input. They want to know what you think. This is an important change. Any one of the changes will satisfy the Voting Rights Act, but they want you to help them determine which is the best system. Notice, for legal reasons, the ultimate decision is the city council's, not the public's. But the city council wants your input. So I want that to be clear so nobody can think, well, they can ignore us. Yes, they can. But legally, they have to be the one to make the decision with your input. And I think they are open to that. From the very beginning, the council has been flexible, as have plaintiffs. If they weren't, we would not have a resolution at this point. Okay, so timeline. September 3rd, final date for City Council to narrow from four systems to two. The agreement calls for the citizens to vote on one of two options. So now we have four. The City Council needs to narrow it down to two, and then you'll vote for those two in November. November 5th, the two finalists will be voted on. All of you registered voters, I assume you're all registered voters. You can choose which one you want. And on December 3rd, the City Council will make a final choice of one of the two, and that will be implemented for the election 2 years from now. Okay, but again, some cities like to have some at large in some districts. So some candidates who are hybrid representation, some candidates would be elected at large, and some would be elected by districts, and you'd have a choice to run either in a district or at large. So if I want to run for city council, I might run in my district, or I might think, no, there's somebody there already who's better than me, or at least more popular, so I'll run at large. So you would have a choice. Also, there would be some people who would be representing just like neighborhoods, and some people would see their role as representing the whole city. Voters would vote for their candidate of choice among those running within the district, and the highest vote getter in each district would become the representative. Voters will also vote for the representative in the at-large. Okay, so again, that's fairly obvious stuff, I think. Okay, I keep forgetting that I got to do this stupid microphone. I'm used to a lavalier mic where I can wander, okay, like the mayor did, but I'm stuck here. Okay, now, although we're counting one of the types as the hybrid representation, there are three possible options of the hybrid. I know this makes it a little more complicated, but stick with me. Okay. One would be an 8-1 system, that is 8 districts and 1 at large. Okay, that's fairly understandable. Another one would be an 8-3 system, 8 districts and 3 at large. Okay, now my math skill is not great, but if I'm not mistaken, that's 11. Okay, so that particular option involves increasing the size of your city council. Can that be done? Yes, it can. As part of a settlement, the court can increase the size of city council. As part of an agreement, that is, the plaintiffs and the defendants agree to this. The judge says, yes, he agrees with it, he could do it. Hybrid 7-2, 7 districts and 2 at large. In each case, there would be 2 districts that would be majority-minority. You'll notice that it doesn't go down to 6 and 3, right? Or 5 and 6, because 7 districts is the minimum number of districts that could be drawn, and from the plaintiff's perspective, have 2 of them be minority districts. So that's why it ends at 7. So it's 8 or 7 districts with 1, 3, or 2 at large. In order to draw, okay, I got that one, got that point. Okay, next. What are you going to do with the school committee? And I know there are members of the school committee here, so you're interested in that, right? Yeah, okay. So if it's an 8 districts, the 8 districts would be combined in groups of 2. Okay, 2 districts here, 2 districts here, to create 4 school committee districts that would each elect 1 member. Okay, and at least one of those school committee districts would be majority-minority. 2 members would be elected at large, and the mayor would also serve. Okay. School committee elections under the hybrid system with 7 districts. The 7 districts would each elect 1 member to the school committee. And the mayor, sorry about that, mayor, you're off the school committee on that one. all of these are systems which may seem complicated now, but when you go online, this presentation, not my visage, but this presentation will be on the city's website. And so you can look at it in detail and you can study it. You don't have to grasp it all right now while I'm droning on, but you have a chance to study it. All right, ranked choice voting. This is new to most of us, although, as you can see, before 1957, it was a system which you had. Anybody here who voted in 1957 or before? I'm just looking. Oh, no, I don't think so. All right. Well, ask your grandparents. They can tell you. Ranked choice is sometimes called proportional representation. And other jurisdictions who use it, Cambridge uses it, Minneapolis and Minnesota, and there are various smaller jurisdictions throughout the country that use it. Recently, the state of Maine adopted something which is very similar, and so it's something that's coming about. Okay. In pure ranked choice voting, if you were to copy what Cambridge does, all the candidates would run at large. So you would continue to have at-large voting just like you have now. No matter where you live in the city, you can run, and you're running at large, and all the voters can vote for you or not. But voters may vote may vote for as many candidates as they wish, but they must rank them. So I like this guy first, I like this woman second, I like this woman third, I like this guy fourth, and so forth, down to however many candidates there are. So if there were 24 candidates running, you could rank them 1 to 24. Would you do that? I doubt it. I doubt it. I doubt anybody does that. Okay, because you'd have to know an awful lot about 24 different candidates in order to be able to judge them that way. Interesting factoid. In your elections recently, you remember when you go to vote now, you can vote for 9, but the average is 5 or 6. Okay, that's the median number. Undoubtedly, some of you vote for 9, and some may go and just single-shot vote for themselves. But the average is 5 or 6. Okay, so people are going to vote for 1 to 24 and rank them. They're probably not. That's your choice. But whatever candidates you vote for, you have to rank them, which one is first and second and so forth. Now, the voting is not only different in the sense that you have to rank them, but the way in which it is counted is differently. To win a seat, a candidate must win a certain proportion of the votes, which is called the threshold or the quota. For your elections, where you're going to be electing 9 at large, the threshold is the number of votes, the number of people who are voting, divided by the number of seats plus 1, and that's 9 plus 1, which is 10, and that works out to 10%. So in the ranked choice system, if you can get 10% of the people to put you number 1, you're in. Could you do that? Probably not. As we'll see, there's other ways to get in beside that, but that's the basic idea. Voters are counted in multiple rounds, and we're going to have a video to show that. And excess votes are transferred once a candidate reaches the threshold. Because the threshold to win for seats is lower, 10%, when you're electing 9, minority groups have a better opportunity to elect candidates of choice. And that's what's happened in Cambridge and other places that have used it. It's very clear that this provides opportunities for minority candidates to win. It also provides opportunity for other kinds of minorities to win. Let's say there's some group out there, let's call them Presbyterians, who have decided that they want Presbyterians on the council, and they're 10% of the voters. If they're organized, they can put a Presbyterian on council. This is open The way people decide to vote and how they form different coalitions is open in this kind of system. It's something to think about, but one of the things to remember is that it's counted these days by computer. You're going to have a ballot that can be read by a computer, and it'll all be put in, and that'll all happen. I can't imagine how this was done before the days of computers. But you did it here before 1957. So there must have been a bunch of people sitting at tables passing these things around to figure out how to do it. From the voter's perspective, it's only the ranking thing which is difficult. And again, the voter will simply rank as many people as they're comfortable with. They might know 4 people, rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop. But if you study that, you will see it's to your advantage to rank as many people as possible so that your vote will continue to count. But you can only do that if you're still voting for people that you want to rank, people that you care about. And that may only be a half dozen or so people, maybe even less. Here's another example of it. This is somewhat artificial because I'm pretending this is a single member system. We're going to elect one candidate here, and we've got 3 candidates, Abel, Betty, and Charlie. I like people. I like animals too, but I wanted monkey to win, and that didn't go far. So people voted, and this particular voter liked candidates B first, candidate A second, and candidate C third. But let's say that in this election, 40% of the voters voted for A, 40% for B, and only 20% for C. So C then becomes eliminated, and C's second place votes for either A or B would be allocated to them, and then one of them would win a majority. And for a single member district system, the quota, remember we talked about the quota a minute ago, is in fact a majority. But let's look at advantages and disadvantages. Okay, let's look at district voting. And we've got various options of district voting, but they all have many of these advantages and disadvantages. Let's look at advantages. It offers direct representation for specific neighborhoods, specific parts of the city. It's very simple. You've got a series of candidates in your district, you vote for one. Lowers the barrier to entry. And I think this is a rather important part. People who would never run citywide will run in a district. Costs less. They're running in their neighborhood, so it's more likely to be people they know, people who know them. It makes a big difference. For example, when you go to district elections, often women are more likely to run. Okay? That's just something that happens. It lowers the barrier to entry, and because it does cost less. Disadvantages. The primary disadvantage of district elections is once you've got an incumbent, she is in there, and she is going to be really difficult to get rid of. Yeah. So you know, if you're looking just for competition, if you're looking just at the question of whether the voter has a lot of different reasonable options, you're going to get more of that at large than you are in a district. That's clearly the case. There may be disproportionate focus on neighborhood issues. Some people believe, and I will note without any evidence, that district representatives become so focused on their neighborhood that they don't see the wider interests of the community. In my experience, that's not necessarily so. And I've also seen experiences where people who are elected at large see their neighborhood first. So, you know, it's not clearly that makes a difference, but it may. Some members of the district may feel that their geographic representative does not represent their principles or interests. If you have a district representative and he's not the guy you voted for, and you don't like what he's doing, you can feel disenfranchised. Whereas at large, you can probably find somebody among the 9 that you liked and feel that that person represents you. Line drawing has to be done every 10 years. It can be subject to challenges. and it can be something that people fight over. In my experience in local government, sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure whether it mostly happens or mostly doesn't, but it's certainly a possibility. Now, what you'll notice here is something that can be something that can be an advantage can also be seen by other people as a disadvantage, right? The district representative can focus on his neighborhood and represent that neighborhood. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It depends on how you look at it. All right, what about this at-large ranked business? Elected officials are answerable to all the voters and not a subset. People get to vote based on principles and interests, not necessarily geography. Am I running over?
Sorry. Okay, just quickly, if anyone parked in the Rite Aid spots, which is over by Rite Aid Pharmacy, they're marked, they did call a tow truck. The police officer is out there, but I just want to let anybody know, you may want to move your car either to the other side of the building, but if you're in a Rite Aid spot, I hate to interrupt, but I don't want anybody towed. So, you all set? Okay. Never mind. The police department took care. We're all set, Steve? Okay, never mind. Come back. I just didn't want anybody going out and say, "Where's my car?" Thank you so much.
This is just a test.
Carry on.
Yeah. I don't have a complete census, but I think most of you did come back. That may say something about me. All right. At-large ranked, you can vote for all of the people. And remember, when you have district representation, what you are saying is that geography is the most important aspect. You're saying that's the most important thing. And that makes some sense, because what does city government do? It allocates resources to neighborhoods, water, garbage, so forth and so on. So that makes some sense that geography would be important. But with an at-large system, people can vote according to geography. That's called friends and neighbors. I'm going to vote for her. She's my next-door neighbor, by golly. That's fine. But you can also vote for other reasons. There may be more incentive to pursue development and projects for the city as a whole. Okay, that's possible. But again, I think that varies a lot. Ranked choice voting is designed to elect people proportionately to the preferences of the electorate. And the evidence is that in ranked choice voting systems, you do get a wider range of different kinds of people on the council. If that's what you want, then that's good. Some people may not want that. That also means the council may take longer to make decisions. You see, what's good may be bad in some ways. Okay, disadvantages. Districts and smaller geographic areas do not have someone in their corner. That's my guy on city council. I know because he's from my district. And by golly, when something comes up that's important to my neighborhood, he's the guy I'm going to call, right? Who do you call if it's an at-large system? Well, you could call any of them, but if you didn't have a contact with any of them, would they listen to you? But if it's your district rep, he probably listens to you. That's the idea. The counting procedure is more complex than straightforward tallying. There may be less focus on neighborhood issues and more concern about the city as a whole, and more resources may be required to run citywide. Okay. Now again, my job here was just to give you some of the facts